Hello, puppies and kittens. Welcome to another episode of Blasphemers Bible. And Lawrence, we're going to make an attempt to get through numbers and finish numbers today.
I think that idea would be best. So in chapter 34, I don't think there's going to be all that much to cover, and it's a fairly short chapter. And then the last couple, similarly, they hit on ideas that we've already hit on quite a bit. And sorry, what?
I will say 34 speaks about the borders of the land. I have some notes on them. 35 I think is quite like my notes here are quite expensive. It's like 5 pages, but for 36 it's just 1 page. It's like 3 notes. So
Shush.
I think we can manage.
Yeah, I think we can. Yeah.
And since we have a retelling in 36 of the story of Zelophehad's daughters.
Zelophehad?
Zelophehad.
I should probably practice, huh?
Yeah, you know what I mean. But the point is, they're totally authentic and only more legitimately told the story again 3 chapters later.
Shut up.
But not quite for no reason whatsoever. And I'm sure it's totally because God is perfect and not the author of confusion.
I don't know what you just said. I think is it just me or is the mic off?
No,
I
Lilith.
think it had something to do with the dogs barking and that kind of half cutting out what Lilith was saying.
Yeah, Lilith, you cut out a little.
Okay, well, I was just saying that in 36, since they're recovering the exact same text that we covered last or the time before last, basically a few chapters ago, we tell the same story with the daughters and having to get special permission to get their father's inheritance because they have no brothers, yada, 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 yada. We already said all of that. And of course, this is exactly what you expect from the single authorship inspired by the perfect God, who is not the author of confusion and does not make mistakes at all. It's a perfect 10 out of 10, no notes, God. Good job.
Reading this chapter.
There are Hebrew words, so Hebrew names.
Oh, good.
Oh, so I should do it. Okay.
Go on ahead, Lawrence.
All right. I'll give it a shot that is only slightly better than Arn. All right.
I was gonna say that there are Hebrew names, but they're also pretty funny in English. So go for it.
Oh man, I can't wait until we get to Oh Holy Bama. That one's a fun one. All right, chapter 34. And the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, "Charge the Israelites, and you shall say to them, when you come into the land of Canaan, this is the land that will fall to you in estate, the land of Canaan by its borders. And your southern limit shall be from the wilderness of Zin by Edom, and your southern border from the edge of the Dead Sea to the east. And your border shall swing round south of the ascent of Akrabim, and pass through Zin. And its farthest reaches shall be south of Kadesh Barnea, and it shall extend out to Hazar Adar, and pass through to Azmon. And the border shall swing round from Azmon toward the Wadi of Egypt, and so interesting, Wadi of Egypt, that's a little vague. And its farthest reaches to the sea. And the western border, the Great Sea, shall be your border. This shall be your western border, that of course being the Mediterranean. And this shall be your northern border. From the Great Sea you shall trace a line to Hor the mountain. From Hor the mountain you shall trace a line to Lebo Hamath, and the farthest reaches of the border to Zedad, and the border shall extend to Ziphron, and its farthest reaches Hazar Enan. This shall be your northern border, and you shall trace for yourselves a line for the eastern border from Hazar Enan to Shepham, and the border shall go down from Shepham to the Riblah, east of Ain, and the border shall go down and touch the slope of Lake Chinnereth to the east. And the border shall go down to the Jordan, and its farthest reaches at the Dead Sea. This shall be your land by its borders all around. Did you want me to continue, or did you want me to...
Continue. Just finish this.
Okay. And Moses...
Finish it!
And Moses charged the Israelites, saying, "This is the land which you will take possession by lot, as the Lord charged to give to the 9.5 tribes, for the tribe of the Reubenites by their fathers' houses, and the tribe of the Gadites by their fathers' houses, and the half tribe of Manasseh have taken their estate. The 2.5 tribes have taken their estate beyond the Jordan, across from Jericho to the east. And the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, These are the names of the men who will share out estates of the land for you: Eleazar the priest, and Joshua son of Nun, and one chieftain from each tribe you shall take to share out the estates of the land. And these are the names of the men: for the tribe of Judah, Caleb son of Jephunneh; for the tribe of
Jephunneh. That looks like that should be pronounced Jephunneh.
it.
Shut
If
up.
you say so. If you say so.
Yefuna.
For the
Jephunneh.
tribe of the Simeonites, Samuel son of Amihud; for the tribe of Benjamin, Eliad son of Kislon.
Elidad.
What?
You said Eliad. It's Elidad.
Elidad, okay.
Yeah, God is my dad.
And for the tribe of the Danites, chieftain Buki, son of Jugli; for the Josephites, of the tribe of the Manassites, of the Manassites, chieftain Haniel, son of Ephod; and for the tribe of the Ephraimites, chieftain Kemuel, son of Shiftan; and for the tribe of the Zebulunites, chieftain Elizaphan, son of Parnach; and for the tribe of the Issacharites, chieftain Paltiel, son of Azan; and for the tribe of the Asherites, chieftain Ahihud, son of Shalomi; and for the tribe of the Naphtalites, chieftain Padael, son of Amihud. These are the ones whom the Lord charged to share out estates to the Israelites in the land of Canaan. And I think I did slightly better than Aaron would have.
I would agree that you did better than me. I don't know about slightly, but you did better than me.
Miles better than what I would have still been, probably. I don't know. Quite far back.
I just really like Buki, son of Jogli.
Yeah.
Well,
that-
it's Yogli
Yogli,
in
yeah.
Hebrew, but you know,
Still,
the
Buki,
English
son of
said that
Yogli.
you should put a J there because we don't follow the Germans.
Yeah, it's kind of annoying, right? I have the same issue with a Y being used for an upsilon in Greek. Like, it's not a Y. There's no Y sound. Like, it's just weird to me. Like, that shouldn't be. That sound doesn't exist.
You think like
I'll
words
be
in
happy to
English like
read.
psychosis?
Yeah. It's because it's from psuke.
Should be like a
Yeah,
U.
like- Yeah.
Do we have commentary on
Yes.
that chapter?
I'm
Of
sure
course
we
we
do.
do.
Yes.
Yeah.
Isaac, can you
Why?
please? Because
There's
I
no
wanna
reason
bore
it
the
should
hell out
be
of
in the
you.
book.
There's not that much, but yeah. So
Yeah.
verses 1 through 15 actually comments. These verses outline the borders of Israel. They are limited to the land west of the Jordan for the 9.5 tribes. Many scholars point to the ideal nature of this boundary list. It is true that Israel did not inhabit the territory outlined here. For example, Israel's western border was not the Mediterranean Sea until circa 144 BCE under Simon Maccabeus in 1 Maccabees 14:5. But this passage presents a fairly accurate picture of the land of Canaan as found in Near Eastern texts from the middle of the 15th century BCE and on, and matches particularly well with the territory in the Egyptian district of Canaan in the second half of the 13th century BCE.
Yeah,
least
on
according-
that one. On
Yeah.
that one, the actual arguments for that are like incredibly weak, and it's very, very speculative for that one. So
Well,
But he does put a disclaimer, at least according to Yochanan Aharoni.
Okay.
Aharoni.
okay, yeah. So
I don't know who that is, but
he's an archaeologist, I believe.
archaeologist, yeah, he's an
Ah.
archaeologist. Yeah. Although this list does not entirely match other lists we have that describe the borders of Israel, at least not entirely, right? So like I
Right,
think in
yes.
Joshua there's one, and then there's
Mhm.
another one I forget in what book.
I think there's also something in Genesis that's kind of a bit more
Well,
it
I do
says
have
the
a
river
I
of,
think there's one in Ezekiel.
Egypt.
I do have a picture
Which
from
is the
Milgram's
Nile,
commentary,
and then
but
it says the Euphrates is what you're looking for, Isaac.
Yeah, that's
Euphrates.
the one in Genesis.
Nile.
But yeah, it says the river of Egypt, and over here it says the like Nahal, which is like a small river, stream, or wadi in this.
Yeah,
in
Wadi.
what
Yeah, which
translation.
is used for like valleys. Anyways, so
It's the Euphrates one that concerns me, because that means Israel has never fulfilled yet what was promised to God or by God.
Well, even
Anyway,
according to
just
this
something to
one,
think
it's
about.
not.
No, it's actually something to avoid because thinking about it seems to cause a lot of genocide. It's
I
something to
like causing
reject.
genocide.
I think it's supposed to it's the traditional extent of David's kingdom, and it most probably did not go anywhere close to that far, but that's
No.
that's
And-
what
and
it's
please
based
do
on.
not-
By
But
the
what
way.
we're
And
reading, what we're reading
and-
right
Yeah.
now looks pretty accurate.
and please do not insinuate anything.
Yeah,
And-
let me
Oh,
finish.
I mean,
you-
historically, it's been
Yeah.
yes,
there's
yes.
been a lot
Please
of.
do not insinuate anything.
I
You
tend
just
to
don't.
state things.
You just don't want me to have any fun.
all right, nobody talk.
Isaac, please.
Yeah. Ashley continues. Here as elsewhere, many of these sites remain unknown at the present time, especially on the north and northeast borders. So,
Yes.
do you want to show the picture?
Yes. Peter, can you please show the picture?
Matt, didn't you want to say something and we completely forgot again?
Yes.
No, it should be at the end.
Okay, good.
So yeah, this is from Milgram's commentary. This is taken from as you read from Wenham's commentary as well. So you can see that the promised land borders, according to the numbers, are they include most of Lebanon, some part of Syria, which includes Damascus, some parts of the Jordan, some part of the in the West Bank, and some parts of Israel.
Yeah.
It does not include like the territory of the Philistines, which is where Gaza should be, and it does not include like the Negev area, which I think it's Edom. Although in this map, it also includes the Moabites for some reason. Maybe it's an outdated map. It's from '81, so go figure.
Yeah, this map, I would say there's a couple of things. One is it's put Edom where it should be Moab. Edom should be south.
Yeah.
The second one is it shows multiple different lines. So the solid
Yes.
line is
The solid
kind
line
of
is
what they actually settled,
it's
including
proposed,
the
yes.
area, including the areas to the east of the Jordan,
Yes.
which we spoke about recently. And then the dotted line is supposed to be the one that is described in what we've just described now.
Yeah, the promised one.
And the bits on the if you look at the right, it's kind of like bigger dots. So that whole section, like they don't really know where the border really should what it's describing. So this one has got a very rounded big one that swoops down to the south. A lot of the other maps that people have made have a more like almost a straight line from Ayin to Hazar Enan rather than this big kind of semicircle that includes parts of the Manassites.
Do you still have? I mean, all the old ancient stories and everything. When you bring up the Jordan River and everything, there's descriptions of lions and of elephants and everything. Do you have any of that left? What kind of wildlife do you have in that area?
I'm not so. I don't think elephants are like there are no elephants.
No, I don't think there were any lions.
I think they were extinct like from the 19th century, maybe earlier. I don't remember.
No, I think there weren't lions for like more than a few thousand years in that area. So you got like, because Israel's quite varied. Like it's got like a desert in the south, and it's got mountains, kind of mountainous in the center and the north. So you've got like some desert animals, snakes, owls, jackals,
Peter, you can,
foxes, but you've also got things like hyraxes, ibexes.
I happened across one of those. I spooked one out of a bush when I was in South Africa.
All right. A hyrax.
Yep. I ran across hyraxes twice, oddly enough. Of all of the animals in Africa that you would run across, I happened to across like the most harmless.
Well, you do know that hyraxes are mentioned in the Bible, like in Leviticus, where it is described as a chewing the cud, which it's not.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, much better to
Sometimes-
run into a hyrax twice than a hippo.
Yeah.
Please continue.
Or a
Um,
hyena, I saw baboons, but fortunately I saw them from a distance. I got up on a hill and I wanted to take a video of the expedition, the people that were doing a dig. I got up on a hill because I'm the videographer, right? So I wanted to get this image. And when I got an image of the surrounding area where these people were digging, I got to see fast motion. I'm like, I'm trying to figure out what these things are. There were two baboons that ran right behind the guys at the dig. They never saw the baboons. The baboons were as big as people, and they were huge. I mean, they were fast, and the guys never saw them. I'm just impressed.
Perhaps it just
The
as well.
baboons could have just
Aren't that just
new
shows
nightmare fuel.
that just shows a common designer.
Don't, Lawrence, don't. Isaac, please continue.
Just go back up. Yeah. Yeah. People are saying like, yeah, lions were endemic, but yeah, they've gone extinct on the
from
whole of
16th
North
to 17th
Africa.
century. Yeah. I
Yeah,
just
lions
read
used to
that.
go like all the way to India and stuff, and somewhere
I-
in like Europe. But
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we're diverging a bit.
yeah. All right. Verse 8.
That's our job, Tomer.
Yeah, but my job is to prevent that. So continue.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Verse 8. Mount Hor. It is not the same Mount Hor where Aaron died, in chapter 20, verses 22, 29, and 33, 38, since it lies near the border of Edom, as in the one where Aaron died. That one lies near the border of Edom and is in the south. Vulgate translates the most high mountains. The Septuagint, the mountain, possibly reading Hor.
Har.
Multiple
think-
mountains of
Well-
horrors.
Yeah, I remember. Didn't we talk about that one? in
Yes, I
Discord?
talked to you on Discord. Yeah, it
Yeah.
was a bit
Ah.
bizarre.
Yeah, hold
Yeah.
on. Let me see if I can pull up the note on that. What did I even say about it? I remember going over it.
Please continue.
Yeah, and then
I-
Targums Pseudo Jonathan translates.
Wait. Peter?
I love that Aaron died on Mount Hor. That's what you get when you look like a Disney villain.
I told you he went through the desert of sin and died on a mountain of horrors. They went to Vegas. Apparently, there are two mountains.
I thought it was Mount Horror. Sorry, my bad.
Oh, it's Atlantic City. Targum Pseudo Jonathan says Mount Umanus, or i.e. Mount Amanus, a high mountain located near the northwest corner of the Mediterranean. Northwest corner of the Mediterranean?
C. Like, I think I forgot to see.
Oh,
Yeah,
wait,
but
hold on.
still, if northwest corner of the Mediterranean would be Spain.
I read this I read this like it's, you know how the Mediterranean, like the north.
You mean northeast? You mean? I think.
I think so. I think I read one comment who said northwest.
okay.
So
I see.
I think it
Yeah.
referred to like the area of we're looking at the Levant.
So
Okay.
I wanted to bring up the stuff that we talked about on about Mount Hor, because there was an interesting thing with the Septuagint, right?
Yes.
So yeah, I'm just gonna basically repeat what I said to Tomer here. So it's an interesting verse. It ends para to oros, which is beside the hill. But as we continue in the next verse, we see a lot of repetition in the use of hill. Kai apo to oros, katametresete. And from the hill you will measure out. It gets kind of interesting though with the beginning of verse 7, where we read, and this will be the boundary for you. Oria is very similar to oros, and the Oria is in the next verse there. So kai tuto estai ta horia humin. So that's the boundary there. Horia is very similar to oros, except with a rough breathing, which means instead of Oria, it's Horia, which, yeah, I already have that one. So the mountain could mean it would be the greatest of mountains, but nothing suggests that. I think that the boundaries was changed to mountain in the second half of the verse at some point, like a rendering with one emendation would essentially make the verse say, "You will measure out the boundary for yourselves beside the mountain," which honestly makes way more sense because the Greek doesn't have difficult constructions here. So I think that there might have been a scribal error in changing horios to oros.
Okay, Isaac, please continue.
Verses 16 through 29, Milgram comments, the chieftains listed here appear for the first time, with the exception of Caleb and Joshua, the lone survivors of the generation of the Exodus to enter the promised land. See 1430 and 38. The order of the tribes follow their geographical relationship in Canaan from south to north, except that Judah precedes Simeon, so that Judah, the chief tribe, may head the list, and Manasseh, the firstborn, precedes Ephraim. There is as yet no satisfactory explanation of why the leaders of the first three tribes enumerated, Judah, Simeon, and Benjamin, are not given the title chieftain. Yeah, like we saw, like it was very repetitive. It kept saying chieftain, but not for the first three. No explanation for that. Nope.
Yeah, I mean there. Yeah, keep
Sorry,
going.
I thought that was the next verse. Reb Chaim Ibn Attar, also known as the Or HaChaim, gave three possible solutions. One, the three tribes appear close to the phrase one leader from each tribe, Nasi Echad, in verse 18, and so there's no need to repeat the word Nasi again. Starting from verse 22, the names are so far removed that the word Nasi was added to them. The second solution, Caleb was already known to be a chieftain. Simeon was not worthy of having a chieftain because of the affair with Zimri, Numbers 25, and Elidad was the same Eldad from Numbers 11, 26 to 29, and since he was a prophet, he held a better title, and calling him a chieftain would have been a demotion rather than a promotion. 3. Judah and Benjamin produced kings for the entire nation, David and Saul, and not just a chieftain for themselves. As for Simeon, the second solution remains adequate. Right. Yeah, the fair with Zimri. All right, and then verse 25, Parnach. Several commentators note that this is a Persian name, appearing in Aramaic seals from Persepolis in Neo-Babylonian economic texts, and in Herodotus's histories 766 and 941. Milgram writes that this is an error of a scribe who lived in the Persian period. Levine writes that this indicates that the present list was redacted in the Achaemenid period, if not actually.
Achaemenid, yeah. Which is
how do you pronounce it?
Achaemenid.
Like Achaemenid. Achaemenid. I always don't know how to pronounce that.
Achaemenid. But anyways, yeah, that's the Persian period.
Yes.
But yeah, the thing is, it's redaction isn't really necessary, because if we, I guess,
actually composed at that time.
Right. Yeah. Which they do. This stuff happens a lot in historiography. In fact, I'm reading currently about Patrick and his historiographies that were written a few centuries after his death, and they include, churches and I guess house names that were not around at the time of Patrick, because the time of the author, a few hundred years later, they were around, and he basically had to justify their position. So it's really interesting stuff. So a redaction here.
Bible does that sometimes.
Yes, it's amazing how much dishonest historiography is used to justify later traditions and spiritual relics, especially if they're highly saleable in the current market.
It's just an issue of historiography in general, honestly.
Totally.
Licht, however, writes that this is not a satisfactory reason to date the chapter to the days of Ezra.
Yeah, he says, no, I don't get it. I don't.
It's like, no.
No.
Okay, whatever, man.
Okay.
What are we talking about?
The Panach.
Was there any place names that people were curious about? What if there were specific ideas where they might be in the list that we?
I mean, it's mostly like when you don't have like concrete evidence, it's mostly speculation. You do have some places which you do have evidence for, but for the rest, it's speculation.
Right.
Let me see what does he say about Parnach.
I wonder how much that's still being used today, or is this different from the texts used by religious extremists today to justify various things? I mean, I know there's that.
I don't think I've ever heard anyone do that.
I wasn't asking you.
Oh boy.
Let's move on.
All right.
Yeah, let's move on.
Yeah.
Let's move on.
All right.
35.
Do Numbers 35.
All right.
All right, who's reading this one? Is it me?
I think you
I
should read it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you'll enjoy this one.
On the plains of Moab, by the Jordan, across from Jericho, the Lord said to Moses, "Command the Israelites to give the Levites towns to live in from the inheritance of the Israelites, from the inheritance the Israelites will possess, and give them pasture lands around the towns. Then they will have towns to live in, and pasture lands for the cattle they own, and all their other animals. The pasture lands around the towns that you give the Levites will extend 1,000 cubits from the town hall, 1,000 cubits from the town hall. Outside the town,
Town wall.
measure 2,000 cubits. That you're going to measure from your elbow to the tip of your fingers. 2,000. Really? Okay.
Karate chop? Just like, oh,
Outside the town, measure 2,000 cubits on the east side, 2,000 cubits on the south side, 2,000 cubits on the west, and 2,000 cubits on the north, with the town in the center. They will have this area as pasture land for their towns. 6 of the towns you give the Levites will be cities of refuge, to which a person who has killed someone may flee. Because we always want to have a place for the murderers to escape to.
Wait,
It's
it's
supposed
supposed
to
to
be-
be
that up.
It's supposed to be
Active.
like until a trial, I think.
or manslaughter.
oh, yeah, or in the case
this-
of accidental death, because their family has the right of the Avenger of Blood to kill them in vengeance if they don't make it to the town in time.
I think we mentioned this on Leviticus. I don't remember exactly
Yeah, I
what
think we
chapter.
did. Yeah.
In addition, give them 42 other towns. In all, you must give the Levites 48 towns, together with their pasture lands. The towns you give the Levites from the land of the Israelites possess are to be given in proportion of the inheritance of each tribe. Take many towns from a tribe that has many, but few from one that has few. Then the Lord said to Moses, duh. Yes, Lilith?
Socialist.
Am I the only one who remembers that the Levites were not supposed to have land because they were not supposed to have an inheritance because the Lord would be their inheritance and they would live off the offerings given by the people and that was to be their inheritance because they were the Lord's, blah, 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 blah.
What do you
Yeah, so
want?
they-
Consistency?
So the idea is that they just have like residential areas with a limited area around that they can use as
Or
pasture.
flocks and herds that they're not supposed to have at all.
Then the Lord said to Moses, "Speak to the Israelites and say to them, when you cross the Jordan into Canaan, select some towns to be your cities of refuge, to which a person who has killed someone accidentally may flee. They will be places of refuge for the avenger, so that anyone accused of murder may not die before they stand trial before the assembly. These 6 towns you will give to your cities of refuge. Will be your cities of refuge. Give 3 on this side of the Jordan and 3 in Canaan as cities of refuge. These 6 towns will be a place of refuge for Israelites and for foreigners residing among them, so that anyone who has killed another accidentally may flee there." So we have cities populated by people who have accidentally killed somebody.
And Levites who kill animals for
Well, the
their
thing is,
jobs.
other people would have lived there too, right? Because these were lands that were basically like a portion of another tribe's land was basically like not entirely given over, but like they're allowed. The Levites would be allowed to use that other land. So
I mean,
like
it's
other. people are still living in that land, or they could be.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I was just getting the impression of like Botany Bay, except like everybody there is not just a criminal sent to Australia. It's entirely peopled with criminals. No, it's entirely peopled with incompetent criminals. They killed someone accidentally. You could have a whole city full of people like that. Calamity Janes, the entire population.
Well, it was a lot easier to kill people
Oh,
accidentally
Lord.
back then, before OSHA and whatever they call
Yeah.
them.
I'm just
Yeah.
seeing a whole lot of Mr. Magoo situations that don't end well.
Yeah, people who put on blindfolds and then spin around with a spear. Oops. Not gonna move over there.
Well, speaking of spears, please continue.
Speaking of spears, please continue.
Reading.
Oh,
Verse
I'm
16.
sorry. You just reminded me of spears. So, oops, I did it again. Okay. These 6 towns you will give your cities of refuge. These give 3 in the Rombs. No, I read that one, didn't I?
Yes,
Let's see, where
verse
was
16.
I? Okay, so if anyone strikes someone a fatal blow with an iron object, like an iron, that person is a murderer. The murderer is to be put to death. Or if anyone is holding a stone and strikes someone a fatal blow with it, that person is a murderer. Again, even if it was an accident, doesn't matter. The murderer is to be put to death. If anyone is holding a wooden object, like a bat, like a cricket bat, and strikes someone a fatal blow with it, that person is a murderer. The murderer is to be put to death. The avenger of blood shall put the murderer to death. When the avenger comes upon the murderer, the avenger shall put the murderer to death. If anyone with malice of forethought shoves another, shoves them, no shoving, shoves another, or throws something at them intentionally so that they die, or if out of enmity one person hits another with their fists so that the other dies, that person is to be put to death. That person is a murderer. The avenger of blood shall put the murderer to death when they meet. But if without enmity, someone suddenly pushes another or throws something at them unintentionally, I'm sorry, I accidentally threw that rock at your head. Or without seeing them, drops on them a stone heavy enough to kill them. Oops, I didn't see you laying there.
It's like that bit with the piano and someone walking under it.
Fuck me, Ansel.
Let me just push the oopsie.
Why couldn't God just come up with the OSHA codes?
And they die, then, since the other person was not an enemy, no harm was intended. See that? The other person has to be an enemy. It can't just be that you grab some kid by the ankles and smash their head against the bus stop over and over and over again until they die, because they weren't your enemy. So that death was accidental.
And ladies, this is a reminder to you all to get copper cookware, because nowhere is copper in that list. And therefore, I wish you joy of your frying pans.
Okay. Then since that other person was not an enemy and no harm was intended, the assembly must judge between the accused and the avenger of blood, according to these regulations. I want to know, the avenger of blood, what does his costume look like?
It's the next. It's like it's a family member.
Yeah,
Not like
The
a. It's
avenger
not like
of
a.
blood
It's
is
not like
just
a.
family member. They don't
It's
get
not
like
an
a
official
crazy hood.
role.
There's no
It's-
cape and armor, gloves.
It's
Well, it
literally
has
just a
various-
person is just mad at the fact that you killed a loved one of theirs, and now they're gonna
Well,
kill you.
actually, there are various meanings to it, but
Mm.
we'll get to my commentary then. We'll talk about it.
Cool.
Okay. The assembly must protect the one accused of murder from the avenger of blood and send the accused back to the city of refuge to which they fled. The accused must stay there until the death of the high priest, who was anointed with the holy oil. Because that makes sense.
Well, actually, it kind of does, but we'll get to that.
But if the accused ever goes outside the limits of the city of refuge to which they fled, and the avenger of blood finds them outside the city, the avenger of blood may kill the accused without being guilty of murder. The accused must stay in the city of refuge until the death of the high priest. Only after the death of the high priest may they return to their own property. The high priest doesn't live in that same city, does he?
No, but you know, it's.
I'm thinking he'd be in some trouble if he did.
About it.
It'd be really convenient if he just like, oops, I accidentally dropped this large stone on your head.
Whoops, it ain't. Actually, he could, because remember that the Levites, the cities of refuge, were also supposed to be cities for the Levites, at least some of them. I don't know what the crossover rate is here. It's clearly multiple sources have been messed up, but so the Levites and the priests, you never know, like maybe him or maybe his cousin or, you know, his boyfriend's best friends, girlfriends, cousins, whatever, who might at least hear that he died. So, you know, a couple months after, you might get the news and be allowed to go home.
This is to have the force of law for you throughout the generations to come, wherever you live. Anyone, and we should talk about that one too, because we know that law doesn't apply to anywhere but this one tiny little circle on the map, and just in this supposedly promised land. It's not like that in North America, not in Europe, not in Asia, so on.
I mean, it depends how you read it.
Okay, I could read it backwards. It still wouldn't matter. Anyone who kills a person is to be put to death as a murderer, only on the testimony of witnesses. Oh, there were no witnesses? I guess it doesn't matter that you have a smoking gun. But no one is to be put to death on the testimony of only one witness.
Yeah,
Do not attempt, huh?
No, I'll get to it. Sorry, I'll wait. Go ahead.
Do not attempt a ransom on the life of a murderer who deserves to die. They are to be put to death. Do not attempt a ransom for anyone who has fled to a city of refuge, and so allow them to go back and live in their own land before the death of the high priest. Do not pollute the land where you are. There's porta potties right there, man. Bloodshed pollutes the land, and atonement cannot be made for the land on which blood has been shed, except by the blood of the one who shed it. Do not defile the land where you live and where I dwell, for I, the Lord, dwell among the Israelites.
Those poor Israelites.
And they're
such an ideal legal system we got here.
Yeah. Well, the Avenger of Blood, I'm
utopian.
interested in finding out more about it, but I do understand it was considered the right of your own family to avenge you, and you're just supposed to take the life of the person who killed one for one, as opposed to, you know, going all Hatfields and McCoys and slaughtering each other by the gajillions for generations to come.
That's not a real number.
When I read at the end what I'm gonna read, someone try and remember, I the Lord am dwelling in the midst of the sons of Israel. You'll see.
Okay.
Isaac, please start.
Yeah, let's start. So verse 2, pasture lands. The Hebrew is migrash. Milgram writes that the word is probably derived from garash, to drive or to chase, referring to land in which flocks can be driven from one pasture to another. He further writes, here migrash is the technical term for the outskirts of a settled area that is not designated for agriculture or human habitation, but for livestock. The ancient Mesopotamian towns were also surrounded by pasture land called tamertu. Another characteristic of pasture land is that it is common property, such as obtained in ancient Ugarit. Farmland, by contrast, is owned by individuals. It is clear that the Midrash was legally a part of the city. See Joshua chapter 21. Hence the city limits, verse 26, within which the manslayer was safe from the blood redeemer, were not the city walls, but the extent of the Midrash. Verses 4 to 5, Ashley comments, scholars do not agree on how to understand the figures in these verses. Since verse 4 gives the figure as 1,000 cubits, which is about 500 yards, while verse 5 gives twice that distance as the measure of the pasture land surrounding the town. The Septuagint reads 2,000 cubits in both verses 4 and 5, probably an early attempt to reconcile the two. The two verses were presumably non-contradictory in the view of the editors of the final form of this text. Otherwise, it is hard to explain why some such expedient as is found in the Septuagint is not followed, and the verses seem textually stable, with the exception of some Septuagint manuscripts. And he adds the opinion of Moshe Greenberg that verse 4 gives the actual distance from the city wall in every direction, while verse 5 is a theoretical verse that concludes that the total measurement of frontage on every side with the minimum sized town would be 2,000 cubits. Okay. So some towns are different sizes. So one is the maximum distance, irrelevant of the size of the town, and the other is the distance from the wall. I saw another one that said like the 1,000 is like it's a 1,000, which is like empty. It's just like here's the walls, an empty area in front of the walls, like for beauty, and then after that, then you have another 2,000 of pasture land. Maybe Rashi said that. Yeah. All right. Verse 11. A person who has killed someone accidentally. Levine comments, the text introduces a code of law governing unintentional homicide, which is to say, cases where it has not been established that the homicide was premeditated, so that it would be wrong to allow a clan relative of the slain person to retaliate without due process. In precisely, the killer is here, and in the following verse termed Rotseach, which usually is understood as murderer, even though premeditation has not been established. Note that in verse 15, the term Rotseach does not appear in a parallel formulation of the law. Verse 12, Avenger. The Hebrew is Goel. As Milgram notes, the Goel has various meanings, such as 1, the receiver of reparations due to the deceased. I'm guessing this is Numbers 5:8.
Yes.
2, the one obligated to bring the debtor out of slavery and buy back his inherited field. Leviticus 25 through 28, and 47 through 54. 3, the Levia, or widow's brother-in-law. Do they mean like the Levirate sort of thing? Is that what a Levia is?
The one who does the levy.
Like the Levirate marriage?
I think so.
Okay. The Levia, or widow's brother-in-law, who provides his deceased kinsman with a survivor by marrying the childless widow, Ruth 3:13. Most early translations read avenger of blood, as seen in verse 19, 21, 24, and 27. Milgram further writes, the obligation of redemption falls on the brother, the father's brother, and the latter son, in that order and on through the father's line. Leviticus 25, 48 through 49. The cities of refuge do not abrogate the rights of the blood redeemer, but make him an agent of the state. That is, he becomes the state's executioner. Thus, the Goel restores the equilibrium by delivering a descendant to the deceased. By delivering a descendant to the deceased. The slave to freedom, the land to its rightful owner. The same holds true for murder. Bloodshed pollutes the land, verse 33, and the land becomes barren. With the blood of the slayer, the Goel neutralizes the deleterious effect of the blood of the slain, restoring the ecological balance. The earth again yields its fruit. Okay. Interesting style there. Verses 13 through 15, Levine comments, 6 towns are to be allocated by the Israelites as towns of asylum, 3 on each side of the Jordan. Note that a contrast is drawn between on the other side of the Jordan, namely in Transjordan and in the land of Canaan. This indicates that in the view of this priestly author, Transjordan lay outside of Canaan proper. The resident alien, Ger Toshav, was also to have access to the town of asylum, like the Israelite. Similarly, inclusive provisions aimed at protecting resident aliens also occur in Leviticus 19:33 through 34 and 25:6 and 35. Okay. I think I actually wanted to bring up something I saw in Rashi. He said something that there's 3 towns on each side, even though there's like 9.5 tribes on one side and only 2.5 tribes on the other side. Why do they need 3 cities on both sides? And he was like, oh, because the Gideonites were really bloodthirsty. Like there was a lot more
Not
murder
Gideon.
going.
It was Gilead.
Gilead. Yeah, no, not Gideon. Yeah, Gilead. Like
Those
Well,
people
there's
on the
a lot
other
of
side
murders
of the
there.
Jordan are bad seed.
Well, he bases this on Hosea 6:8, which
Yeah,
says
'cause
Gilead, city of evildoers, bloody ambush.
Okay then.
It's like oh, let's just put an extra city of refuge because there's going to be more accidental deaths. Like, okay, yeah.
We
it's strange.
plan on accidental deaths.
At 10 p.m. precisely, there will be spontaneous dancing. Verse 16, an iron object. Milgram comments, iron of any size can cause death. Okay, yeah, if you swallow it. Sefer Numbers 160 and Talmud 176b, perhaps reflecting the very beginnings.
Wait.
I was just
Sorry?
he's just trying to fill up a word count.
Please continue.
Yeah, I mean he writes a lot, doesn't he? Perhaps reflecting the very beginnings of the Iron Age when it was used exclusively for weapons. Because they were instruments of death, iron tools were forbidden in the building of the altar and the temple. Exodus 20:25 and 1 Kings 6:7. And to this day, the knife is covered during the recitation of grace in an observant Jewish home.
Didn't know that.
Me neither.
Maybe it's some communities.
I've never seen that tradition of covering the knife.
Maybe you're not as observant as you were.
Yeah,
Also,
yeah,
we
you're
say
not a real Jew.
grace. I don't know if he means. I mean, grace. What we would call grace is like after you eat, so there wouldn't be knives on the table. So, whatever. Okay. That the iron object is in a class by itself is shown grammatically by the use of va'im, here rendered anyone. However, who
In
in
the
this
JPS.
in this and the following verse describing the stone tool, whereas the wooden tool that follows in verse 18 is introduced by or.
Which is or, yeah.
Yeah.
In
Verse
JPS,
17.
it's similarly, but yeah, I mean,
Yeah, that's interesting. Verse 17. If anyone is holding a stone, the Hebrew is the Evan Yad, which literally would mean stone of the hand. Targum Onkelos translates it as a stone that can be taken in the hand. Rashi says large enough to fill the hand. Milgram, Levine, and Licht take hand to mean tool, and thus render a stone tool, and actually writes that hand refers to the size of the instrument.
Yeah,
So, like
because
a
it's
fist
important
size.
because large enough to fill the hand is all you need. Anything more than that is a waste.
well, in the case of David,
What?
you know David and Goliath. I don't think he used like
oh, you sweet innocent boy. You don't know what he's talking about, but I do.
I missed something.
No, Lilith
Well, I mean,
got it. Everybody
we
else
haven't gotten
missed it.
to the wooden tool yet, so.
Well, Isaac's gay, so
Okay.
The wooden tool. Okay, whatever.
well, there's that too.
Okay,
So if I
that's-
kill you with this, that doesn't count. This tiny
Wait,
little
Isaac is talking about his wooden tool? What?
Yes.
No, I said
No,
I was saying that we hadn't gotten to it yet.
I mean we don't get to it.
Yeah, there isn't anything about it.
Okay.
Yeah,
I think Thomas censored that bit.
Well,
verse
there's not really
24.
to say it. I mean, I can quote
joking.
Milgram. I
Yeah.
can quote Milgram. It says literally a wooden tool of the hand. That is a cane. Ezekiel 33:9.
Oh, okay. Did you
Okay.
know that in England, like 100 years ago, there was a martial art that was all about how to use canes and walking sticks?
Oh yes. Didn't Holmes engage in stick fighting with the?
Yeah, I think it's the
yeah,
same one.
That's
Yep.
I can't remember the name of it, but it really was a thing. The Victorian gentlemen had their own martial art.
Were
Okay.
guns banned then?
Probably. No, not really, but maybe in the cities and stuff like that. Verse 24, the assembly. Hebrew is Edah. Ashley writes that in most cases this must have been a group representative of the whole congregation, like Deuteronomy 19:12 and Joshua 24. Since it is not defined here, he suggests that this legislation assumes an older and well-known procedure and may show that the author of this law was familiar with those of Deuteronomy 19 and Joshua 20, and that it was written after them. Milgram notes that the Qumran sectarians, the ones who wrote the Dead Sea Scrolls, in Damascus document 10:4, ordained that a court should comprise 10 judges based on 1427, where Edah refers to the 10 scouts who rendered the majority opinion. That's interesting. As far as I know, in like
considering the 10 scouts got in big shit for it and kind of screwed everybody over.
there is this idea of like using words, like if a word is used in a way, like the word Edah is used for this group, and the group is made up of 10 people, you could learn that the word used elsewhere is also referring to a group of 10. Like that's the idea, where it's kind of a thing that the rabbis in the Talmud do quite a lot, where they look at what usages of words and try and like extrapolate them out like that. I did want to say that as far as I remember, in like Jewish law, like what's written down is that like to prosecute someone for murder, to give any sort of death sentence, you actually need like a court of 50, no 70, which is like the Sanhedrin, like the high court. And so you need a temple and a high court of 70, and they all have to unanimously agree to capital punishment. And there's a saying, I think it's in the Talmud, it says a court that executed someone once in something amount of years is called a bloody court.
Okay,
but that was probably, a later, this was written after they actually did, courts and stuff. So
yeah, that would be a later interpretation. But
yeah, so like 100,
a good one.
100 CE, 200 CE, they were like, oh no, they weren't killing people all that often. It was.
It sounds like they were killing people quite a lot. You have whole towns full of people who committed accidental negligent homicide.
Well, that's just in scripture, which we don't have archaeological evidence for, at least. So I would say, yeah, we don't know. Okay, verse 25. Until the death of the high priest. Ashley writes, is the term of stay in the city of refuge seen as atoning for the death of the victim? And why is the death of the high priest seen as the end of that term? The simplest and best view seems to be that the death of the high priest marks the end of an old era and the beginning of a new one. North connected this verse with the custom of amnesty to prisoners at the ascension of a new monarch. But the term of detention in the city of refuge ended not with the anointing of a new high priest, but at the death of the old one. It is possible that the death of the high priest expiated the death of the victim, and hence brought the blood guilt of the killer to an end. His death may have been understood as fulfilling the principle that shed human blood can only be expiated by shed human blood, Genesis 9:6. In this case, the high priest's death was on behalf of the killer, much as the priest offers sacrifices on behalf of the people elsewhere. The Talmud in Tractate Makot 11b also takes the passage in this way. It is the death of the high priest rather than the term of confinement in the city of refuge that expiates the death of the victim. This view is also consistent with verses 32 to 33, which do not allow any ransom to buy off the blood of the victim.
Yeah, so it's essentially seen as kind of like an offering or like a for redemption.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sort of like an accidental human sacrifice. Like, we're not going to actively sacrifice, but when he goes, we'll just count it as a sacrifice.
I mean, the high priest is supposed to be like this sort of representative, like on the Yom Kippur, that he's the one that goes in, and it was there is this idea that they died very often because, like, if you weren't pure of heart and went into the into the Holy of Holies, you would die. And there was a tradition of apparently of tying like a long rope around their waist so that when they went in and fell dead, they would pull them out.
I thought it was around their toe or their ankle for some reason. I just that's what I remember reading in the when we were in Leviticus.
I doubt this ever happened in the actual temple because they didn't die miraculously all the time. This is a tradition.
Were they supposed to have like a bell so that if they fell over, they'd hear it? Because you're not allowed to look. I mean, you can't look.
I think if God was real, it would just be one after the other.
So if you had them where they like wrap it around their waist, they wrap the rope around their waist, you can eventually figure out that there's a problem. You give it a little tug, it doesn't tug back or whatever, and you can eventually decide, okay, it's time, and you just like draw the corpse back if you like. But if you tie it around the ankle like you were describing before, some practical jokers are going to wait. They're going to feel how tight everything is, and then right at the right moment, they're going to go yoink,
and he's going to drop all of the incense and on the ark.
It's the more sensible version. I'm saying that's what I remember being in the Bible.
Then the high priest comes out and like, get me some kitchen towel, like. I spilled on the Lord's footstool.
Oh, well, I'm sure it's all sacred anointing oil anyway. It's fine. Fine. It's fine.
All right. Okay, there's a bit more. Petarius, from circa 6th, 7th century CE, writes, what does it mean that a homicide returns for absolution after the death of the high priest? Except that the human race, which brought death upon itself by sinning, receives absolution for its guilt after the death of the true priest, namely our Redeemer? ?
Yeah.
Who's Petarius?
He was the disciple of Gregory the Great, who is primarily responsible for the transmission of Gregory's works to many later medieval authors.
Yeah, Petarius, he was the brother of Deletarius.
Oh, you're terrible.
Verse 29. Okay, let me do this a bit quicker. Verse 29. It is unclear if this verse refers to the previous section or to the next one. Levine, Milgram, and Ashley wrote that this refers to the previous section, with Levine adding that most likely verses 30 through 34 were appended from another code of law, and Ashley writing that they could be late interpolations of verses 10 through 28. Licht, however, writes that this verse serves as the opening for verses 30 to 34. Right. This shall be your law of procedure for all ages. Yeah. Okay. Verse 31. Milgram comments, this prohibition clearly has in mind the blood redeemer who might accept monetary compensation for the life of his slain kinsman. See 2 Samuel 21:4. If he does, the nation Edah cannot acquiesce, but must bring the murderer to his death. There may be a more theoretical reason for explicitly prohibiting ransom for homicide. The Italian law implies compensation in all torts except for loss of life. See Exodus 21 to 23 to 24 and Leviticus 24:17 through 21, as well as Deuteronomy 19:21. Lest taking of life also be regarded as a tort and hence subject to monetary compensation, the Italian law is not quoted here, and murder is explicitly excluded from monetary compensation. Any lawyers know what Italian and tort is?
Well, Italian is like the
Lex
an eye for an eye.
talionis.
Ex
Yeah.
talionis, yes.
Ah, and the tort is just like a social sin sort of thing.
It's a lesser sin. The principle that like you could buy off the family of the person you killed is something that exists or has existed in some times and places. What is the appropriate compensation? I mean, let's face it, there are some people for whom the family members might not be all too terribly bothered. You're like, I am the Avenger of Blood. I'm totally coming for you. Right after I'd done my nails. Bye.
Siblings taunting each other. If someone killed you, we would only pay this amount for a ransom.
Anglo-Saxons had a weir guild, so you pay what somebody was worth to the family.
Yeah, and like I was actually just thinking of that obituary that went viral recently. A woman was like, thankfully, my father's dead, to the disappointment of absolutely nobody. Unfortunately, he survived his stroke, and fortunately, however, it robbed him of speech, and he couldn't harass anyone else. And now, in lieu of flowers, please stop being assholes to each other. Bye. It was like, oh my god.
Verses 33 and 34. Levine comments, the notion that the land and its inhabitants are linked to each other, so that human behavior defiles the land as well as the people and leads to exile and loss of the land, is basic to several biblical sources. This is particularly significant with respect to the symbolism of blood as life, expressed in the context of the laws governing capital punishment. The land must be cleansed of the blood of the slain that flows into the earth. This is a passive reflex of the notion that the land demands retribution for the loss of life, but the land will not be granted expiation unless murder is avenged by the shedding of the murderer's blood. The quotation's a bit strange here.
It's quoting from the Bible.
It's
okay. No, but there's like the land is the beginning of a quote, and then expiation is the end of the quote of a quote,
Wait.
as well as murderer's blood.
Let me check real quick.
Yeah.
Just be a copy paste.
You just have like an extra one in the middle,
Lawrence,
or
it's
at the end.
That's how he quoted it. I mean.
Oh, okay.
It seems to me from what I've read.
Oh no, that's the end of the quote by Levine. Okay.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so but the land will not be granted expiation. That's the quote, unless murder is avenged by the shedding of the murderer's blood. Okay. Cool.
So, what were you saying, Lilith?
It seems to me from what I've read that this idea of our actions essentially having metaphysical consequences affecting nature magically, as if nature is offended by us doing this or that, is something that a lot of cultures and religions have dabbled with. Although I think the idea, particularly this sort of the antiquated idea of original sin, the version where, we polluted the entire course of nature by eating a fruit, is probably the most extreme version of it I've ever seen. But it does seem to be something that a lot of primitive cultures had some concept of the famine must be caused because we have offended the land or the gods by doing whatever, and we have to magic the other way to balance the scale or whatever.
Yeah, that's definitely true. A lot of cultures have
go out.
You can't explain that. Yeah. The one note I had on this, and I think P-Town would probably appreciate this note. The stuff about the witnesses. So we get more about it in Deuteronomy. But having witnesses necessary for a person to die, this idea would be taken over in the concept of the Trinity. So in the Johannine Comma, that's 1 John 5, 6 through 8, or 6 through 8, right? 7 through 8, maybe. But it's only like part of that, part of those verses. The idea that there are multiple witnesses in heaven is taken up in the Trinitarian doctrine.
Is that the bit where Jesus says, if I testify for myself, my testimony is not true, another must testify for me? But then it's the Holy Spirit that testifies for me, so
There's
stuck
that
on
too.
that.
There's that too, yeah. But the part in 1 John, at least the way that it is now in Bibles, is directly linked to this idea that we will see more of in Deuteronomy. They need multiple witnesses.
Lawrence, you
Are we
pointed
ready
out
to
about
move
this,
on to
but
the next chapter?
The whole trial that Jesus went through was completely unbiblical.
Which one?
So in a way, it's like a lot of these laws part
Isn't
of
it completely
why they
biblical
were
because it only
established.
happens in the Bible?
Well, I know what he means. That Jesus's trial was not left to any any Old Testament standard, any biblical.
Oh yeah, because
It just broke like
it's supposed to be
broke so
Roman.
many
no?
broke all.
rules.
Yeah, it's
It
No,
broke,
no,
like-
they mean the Jewish trial before the Sanhedrin that happened in the middle of the night, which
There
was
is one.
illegal, but happened during the
Right.
holy days, which was also illegal. It's one of the reasons the story is really highly
Yeah,
fictionalized.
it wouldn't have happened in Jewish culture, and it wouldn't have happened in Roman culture either. Like especially when he's all like, "Hey, do you guys want Jesus or who's the other guy? Barnabas?
Barabbas.
Barabbas.
Yeah, Barabbas. Okay.
And of course, I hold the position that because it literally broke, quote unquote, what you said, all the rules, all the laws, it points to the veracity, the validity of the historical event that happened and how it's divine.
Okay.
Sure.
I know that you don't know how polemics work. Okay.
I mean, there's
It's
always
true.
some of
I
these
actually
things
don't know what
come
that
up.
word is, honestly. I
Actually,
really
you
don't. I'll give it to you.
You might find it very
I ha-
interesting to
I
look up
might-
polemics.
I
because
might lift my hand up and go
they're
look that up. just
highly
'cause of that.
valuable.
Yeah, I saw something recently about how there's like in the I'm getting the Arabic word instead of the English word, the gospel. In the gospel, it says that he was like pierced in his hands and his feet, right? But like apparently like Romans wouldn't have done that because it would have just killed them straight away. So
Yeah, it
they
just-
would
it
have
just would
done
have
it through
been-
the wrist.
Well, the thing is, it would have been through. I forget if it was hands or wrist, but you would have been like kind of there's in the book from L. Michael White scripting Jesus. He points out how they would have done it. So they would have had the hands actually or the arms actually tied, kind of like going like around the back.
the hands tied and then the feet
Yeah.
nailed.
And then the nails in the ankles.
Yeah,
I
but
have
not crossed
I
over
have to-
separate.
I have to disagree with just partly because as I understand it in actual crucifixion as opposed to biblical crucifixion, they
Yeah.
didn't always nail anyone at all. Often a person was tied up and left to die of strangulation and exposure. In fact, the crucifixions that happened outside the city of Jerusalem during the invasion in 70 CE, where they tore down Jerusalem, they killed so many people. It was horrible. It was horrible, horrible invasion by Titus, and not one stone left on another, all that stuff that they pretend Jesus was prophesying about because, it's pretty clear was written after with direct quotation to it. They, in order to horrify the Jewish people during the siege, took some of their prisoners and actually crucified them by nailing them up in contorted positions, which was like, it's a lot easier to get your hands on rope than nails. And again, if you're just like left out there strangled by your own shoulders to die of exposure, horrible death, takes days, if you're lucky days, awful. But it wasn't always, the version that Christianity envisions in its movies is not really all that accurate.
Yeah, I think the one thing is that sometimes they would have definitely used nails. We actually have archaeological evidence for that, where like we would find like crucifixion sites, and there's like a leg and foot, leg and foot bones, with a nail driven through them. So like we still have at least.
So they would sometimes do back and forth.
Yeah, so
I suppose it depends a
when-
bit what was on hand, where they were,
Right.
and how many
Yeah.
people they were killing.
Yeah,
Anyways,
so if there was spare
Oh,
parts
yeah.
of nails, then
Yeah,
Right.
what was the thing, Matt? You wanted to say something about the about him being in the midst.
sorry.
You said before that at the end of the chapter for 34.
That's at the end.
got one more
Written out
chapter.
on-
Wait.
That's at the end of when we finished.
The show.
Matt needs to
Oh.
reset
No,
his
no,
internet or
no.
something.
During, are we not reading chapter 36?
We are.
We are.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we will. We're
Just-
getting,
I'm just-
we're
Yeah,
getting
so
numbers done.
36.
Sorry, you're
But
just glitching a little
Yeah,
bit,
your
Matt.
internet is-
internet's messed up.
Yeah. Lay off the drugs, man. You're glitching.
Lilith,
I was
do you
going to
wanna read
ask
this one?
Matt to read
Wait,
chapter 36.
yeah. Okay.
Matt,
Should we try it or?
I
Was
don't know.
mine, isn't it?
No, we
He's
shouldn't
gonna-
try it.
He's gonna do his recap at the end. Do you want to try?
Matt, you might want to refresh first because you're roboting a lot.
Yeah.
Your,
That's
your
a good
connection
idea.
isn't great.
Okay.
And he's gone.
Okay, he'll be back in a minute.
All right,
okay,
So-
well, that's
So I do have a
important.
thing in the meantime. So I got a package from one of our viewers
Oh,
that has a lot of books. So do you guys want to see a short
Yes,
unboxing?
please.
Is that better?
yes.
Yeah.
Let's see.
Yes.
We'll see. We'll see. Yeah. So let's see. First, Mormon doctrine of deity.
Oh, that sounds fun.
We got the essential Muslim daily dua. So I think it's like a prayer thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. We have. Let's
We have a
see.
lot of
Oh,
prayers.
the book of confessions and the book of order, and these are from the General Assembly of the United Presbyterian Church in the United States of America. Not entirely sure what they're about, but you know what? I am very interested to look through these. The book of order and the book of confessions.
Somebody
whole
asked me for
section
my shipping
in-
address. They had something. They said they had something special to send me. I said, well, no letter bombs or anthrax envelopes, please.
Right? Yeah. Big worry. But also, here's something that we will all enjoy in 3 parts.
Ooh,
Lord of the Rings.
Nope. The Zenda Vesta.
no way.
How
That's a
dope
later one, right?
is that? This is the Zoroastrian text.
I-
Yes.
Ooh.
The Zenda Vesta.
Now, I'm a little confused. The Zenda Vesta's in 3 parts. I read that the Hadnak Nasht.
Well,
Is
maybe
that-
it's just published in 3 parts is the thing.
okay, because I remember there being like 6 parts of Zoroaster. There's 6 books, I think. It's been a long time since I've read any of it. I read the Hadnak Nasht and I read one other, and I wish I could remember more clearly. I'll have to go back and look it up. I didn't read all of it. I didn't
Right.
read all of them. I just read those 2.
So very, very exciting stuff.
Yep. You will definitely
Sounds
be
fun.
diversified when you study Zoroastrianism.
Yeah, right.
I love this one passage that I read, where Zoroaster is talking to Ahura Mazda, and Ahura Mazda is just like the way all gods are,
Hmm.
absolutely full of himself, just talking about what a great badass he is, because that's just what gods do,
Yeah.
right? And he talks. They mention about the soul of the righteous man when he dies will ascend to the kingdom of justice and truth, ruled by the wise Lord Ahura Mazda. But the soul of the selfish men, I'm trying to remember how they translated it,
Is it the
will
impious?
descend into the kingdom of the lie, ruled by Aroman the opposer. I'm like, so this is where Christians get the heaven and hell thing that doesn't exist in Judaism.
I
You-
mean,
you get a lot
there
of-
was influence, I would say, but in Christian theology, God still rules, and
Shut
to be fair,
up.
he still rules in hell.
Well, yeah, but it's also supposed to be cut off from his presence because
Right,
his
yeah.
presence is the source of virtue and light.
And if he's everywhere, how do you get cut off from his presence?
Yeah, good
magic,
question.
You have to learn
logic defying
Kabbalah.
magic.
You need to learn Kabbalah to understand that bit.
Okay.
Oh, I had to take a
It's
phone call, and all I
so-
heard was screaming about what?
In my head,
It
it's
was
like
an
you have to imagine
accidental
like
death.
if you imagine
Okay,
like the globe, the snow globe Earth, but imagine like in a spiritual sense, like all of existence is this sphere, but God is inside and outside at the same time, and he just sucks himself out like through a straw, and so gives space for
The damned. He
reality.
gives space for the damned.
I hope it's a metal straw because he should not be ruining the turtles.
It's normally called a thread, but whatever.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, they have similar things in that in Mesopotamian
Or a
stuff.
chain, actually. I don't know.
Okay,
Well, no wonder
are
we
we moving
don't hear
to?
from him so much. I mean,
We
hell,
should.
if he can suck himself out, then why would he ever get off the couch?
Guys,
Are
let's
we
be
moving to
careful.
the?
Tomer's here.
Hmm.
I
Matt,
can
Matt,
think of
it looks like
Yeah.
your internet connection might be a little better. Did you want to give
Yeah,
this
we did.
this chapter a shot?
Yes.
Or should we stay on
Okay.
this topic?
Let's finish this.
No,
then.
right.
It's the last chapter.
And
Let's
the
finish
heads of the-
numbers. Even though it's impossible to
Yes.
finish numbers, we're going to finish numbers.
Yeah, let's do that.
And the heads of the fathers' households of the families of the son of Gilead, the son of
Gilead?
Machar.
Oh my
Yeah.
God.
He's
Gilead?
trying. He's
Gilead
trying to
Gilead son of-
get an aneurysm.
You reminded me. I have dyslexia.
Already
don't-
did
don't-
this
Yeah.
on purpose.
Roll with
It's okay. We're
just roll
we're
with
just
it.
messing with Tomer.
Yeah, Gilad, son of Machir.
Machil.
son of Manasseh, and the families of the sons of Joseph came near and spoke before Moses and before the leaders and the heads of the families' households of the sons of Israel. And they said, the Lord commanded my Lord to give the land by lot to the sons of Israel as an inheritance. And my Lord was commanded by the Lord to give the inheritance to Zelophehad. Zelophehad, our brother, to his daughters. But if they marry one of the sons of the other tribes of Israel, the inheritance will be withdrawn from the inheritance of our fathers and will be added to the inheritance of the tribe of which they belong. Thus it will be withdrawn from our allotted inheritance. When the Jubilee, the sons of Israel comes, then the inheritance will be added to their inheritance of the tribe to which they belong. So their inheritance will be withdrawn from the inheritance of the tribe of our fathers. Then Moses commanded the sons of Israel according to the word of the Lord, saying, the tribe and the sons of Joseph are right in their statements. This is what the Lord has commanded concerning the daughters of Zelophehad, saying, let them marry whom they wish, only they must marry within the family of the tribe of their fathers. Thus no inheritance of the sons of Israel shall be transferred from tribe to tribe, for the sons of Israel shall each hold to the inheritance of the tribe of his fathers. Every daughter who comes into possession of an inheritance of any tribe of the sons of Israel shall be wife to one of the family of the tribe of her father, so that the sons of Israel each may possess the inheritance of his father. Thus no inheritance shall be transferred from one tribe to another, for the tribes of the sons of Israel shall each hold to his own inheritance, just as the Lord has commanded Moses. So the daughters of Zelophehad did. Mahala? Did I get that right?
Machla.
Mahala?
Machla.
All right.
I don't blame you. There's an H there, so.
You can just do Mahla, yeah.
All right. Anyway,
Oh, they're going to Valhalla? What?
Mahla.
yeah. Tizar, Hogla, I remember Hogla, Malkar, and
Milch.
Noah.
No.
The daughters of the Zelophehad married their uncle's sons. They married those from the families of the son of Manasseh, the son of Joseph, and their inheritance remained with the tribe of the family of their father. These are the commandments and the ordinance which the Lord commanded to the sons of Israel through Moses in the plains of Moab by the Jordan opposite Jericho.
So if you're a woman and you get an inheritance, you can marry any cousin you want.
This
Well, it was the whole tribe. I think
This-
maybe this was just an example that they married.
Hundreds of
Well, it
This-
was like
this-
that in my
hundreds of
family.
thousands of people.
this explains the
based-
American South. You can let the girls marry everyone they want within the family.
Well,
that's
it
when
is
there's
based
something.
on the. It
Hundreds
is
of
based.
thousands of people.
It is based on the law of succession
men.
from. It is
Sorry,
based
Tomer.
on.
Somebody let Tomer
Jinx.
finish the
No,
fucking
let-
We're just
Yeah.
in sync right now.
Let
I don't know what's
Let Tomer talk.
It
Sorry,
is
Tomer, go ahead. Oh
in
my
27 in 27:9 you have I quote from Milgram here, which is where there are no children, the brothers of the deceased inherit the property. So it writes, although the daughters could have married anyone from their tribe, they selected husbands from their clan, a fact that also coincides with the law of succession.
By the way, Tomer, I know why P-Town is doing this, because at the start of the show, you said, don't imply anything. So you ruined the entire show for him already at the very start.
Mm.
All right, shall I do the commentary, or do you want
Yes,
to read
yes.
the comments?
Yep.
or-
Luke Snyder says offers $6.66 and says, if what defines the tribe is as what defines the Hebrews, thus the law and lineage of the king, what genetic marker defined Jewish people, if any?
I don't understand the question at
Genetic
all.
I
marker?
I'm
don't
trying
understand
really
the
hard to
question either.
understand the question. What defines the tribe is as what defines the Hebrews. So those are synonymous.
What genetic marker
The
defines
only thing I
Jewish
can
people?
the only thing I can say is that the tribe is by the father, so you're in the tribe if your father is in the tribe. But Judaism is since the time of since the Second Temple period, I think, has been matrilineal. So if your mother is Jewish, then you're Jewish. So you're Jewish based on if your mother is Jewish, and your tribe is based on if your father. So technically,
I do know that there are like genetics studies which shows that Jews have origins from the Middle East area of
Yeah.
like, Levant.
I have heard even
if you
in
want-
some documentaries of genetic markers for Levites potentially.
Yes. Yeah.
So
So their
yeah.
Y-DNA, what their Y-DNA is there is a genetic marker in their Y-DNA, whatever however you say it, that like kind of shows that they're patrilineally all related to each other, or most of them anyway, which is
So-
interesting. It's like, how did someone become a Levite without the tradition?
I don't I
Mhm.
mean I don't know the name of the genetic marker. I'm sure you could Google it,
Oh, it's
but
in the
there
back
are
of my
some.
mind.
Yeah, it's the let's see, Levite gene. R1A, I think maybe.
R1A?
R1A Y2619. Ashkenazi Levites descend from a single Levite ancestor. Oh, okay, so we have a genetic marker for a specific bottleneck of Levites within Ashkenazi Jews. We don't have for the entire tribe. That makes sense.
Okay, yeah, that does make sense. I mean, the diaspora is going to be affected by the last several millennia of history, but and in fairness, not all genetic markers are passed down, even if they are part of your heritage. So,
Yeah,
interesting.
Okay, can you please start a commentary?
Yes, let's go. Introduction. Okay, Milgram writes, why was this chapter placed at the end of the book and not where it belongs contextually after 27 verses 1 through 11? Most critics would answer that this chapter was composed after the book of Numbers was completed. Another possibility, given by Gunther Plaut, is that this chapter may reflect the Torah's pervasive genealogical interest. There are 10 generations from Adam to Noah, 10 generations from Noah to Terach, Abraham's father, and 10 generations from Abraham to the daughters of Zelophehad. The end of the wanderings is thus related to creation, and Genesis and Numbers are placed in a unified structure. A literary explanation also bears merit from Dennis T. Olson. The accounts of the daughters of Zelophehad in Numbers 27 and 36 form an inclusio for the events and organization of the new generation whose emergence is marked by the second census list in chapter 26. Okay, verse 4. Ashley comments, Knopf thought that verse 4 is irrelevant both literally and factually, but the Jubilee legislation was in many ways the great remedy for ills concerning land and property in Canaan. The point of verse 4 is that even this legislation will do nothing to remedy the problem of inheriting females marrying outside their tribe, since that legislation dealt only with purchased property not inherited property. See Leviticus 25, 13 through 55. Unless there is new legislation, real damage will be done to the Manasseh inheritance, which is what 27, 1 through 11 was designed to prevent in the first place. Interesting thing about that is it says if they have a jubilee, and Rashi says this implies that at some point the jubilee will stop, which is interesting. Verse 6, Fort Slavcha's daughter. Chazal in Talmud Bava Batra 120a, and also Targums Sir Jonathan decreed that this does not refer to future generations. Milgram explains, this is a reflection of rabbinic times when the Jewish people had long been alienated from their ancestral portions in the Promised Land. However, the Book of Tobit follows this law literally and even imposes 2 additional stipulations. 1, the father who has no sons is responsible for marrying off his daughter to one of his kinsmen. And 2, violation of this law is punishable by death according to the law of the Book of Moses. Tobit 6:13. That's interesting. I didn't know about that. Yeah, it makes sense. They didn't really have the whole like tribal locations and stuff. You see all these maps and stuff. I don't. It's possible that it's completely legendary. There probably never really was a point in time where each tribe lived in its own place, and only and kept this law of only marrying people from their tribe. If they Lilith, you're
Sounds a
muted.
little inbred to me.
Yeah, just a little.
No, they would have. It's only
possible,
if they have no brothers.
But there is some in the text. There's a mention of Issachar does this and that, and there's certain areas were typically farming, and certain areas were more for cattle, and certain areas were by the sea, and certain areas so there were definitely at some point areas with various economic advantage and associations made with the tribes there. But yeah, some of this does definitely seem a bit retconny. So
Pretty sure the Bible establishes that not to inbreed. So not following your point.
I'm having
just
trouble hearing you,
remember-
P-Town.
remember
The
there
Bible
were-
establishes what?
Doesn't it have rules against inbreeding?
Yeah, Adam and
Did we cover
Eve.
that?
It has
No,
rules against
once-
specific-
Noah's kids.
Once the Levitical law comes about.
It's
There's
Leviticus 18.
incest and there's inbreeding. Inbreeding doesn't necessarily mean you marry your close relatives. It just means you only marry within a select pool. So, for example, Ashkenazi Jews, since we had some sort of bottleneck like 1,000 years ago, and we marry only other Ashkenazi Jews, not for a long time, you ended up with inbreeding, causing genetic
Right. I
diseases
understand.
and stuff. So
Yeah, we had the same
inbreeding
problem in the
is
very, very small town that my family is from. Where
Hmm.
cousin mom and cousin dad ran into some problems in their genealogy.
Well, that's not what you guys were
slightly
arguing
different. That's
here.
more incestuous than the problem of inbreeding as a general idea.
Yeah, just I have Luke's comment. You'd have to double check, but I think it's haplogroups, which they determine if somebody's like Germanic, Celtic, or from whatever area of the world you are. You do have to double check, but I think it's called haplogroup.
Oh, yeah, haplogroups.
Sorry, I know it's a little bit off topic from what you guys were talking about. Just remembered.
yeah,
All right,
makes
so
sense.
have we finished this
We did.
one?
Yes.
We did
All right.
it.
So we've gone through 4 books, 4 of the 5 out of the Pentateuch. We've got one more.
Out of the Torah.
Torah.
Which is, yeah, Pentateuch, yeah.
Is this not the Pentateuch?
It is, yeah.
Yes.
is.
Yeah, 1-to-1.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right,
So that is exciting stuff. So in Deuteronomy,
And
we're
I want to commend Lawrence on his show that he does, Atheist Sunday School, that he finally finished the Bible entirely.
Yep, it's all done.
Yeah.
How long did that take you, sir?
6 years. 6 years. 308 episodes. Started off kind of slow. We're doing like 2 chapters at a time, and then we're like, okay, this is hellfire. Let's go up to 3 or 4 chapters at a time. So we started doing that. Of course, for that show, it's just me and Ruben. Really, sometimes we have a guest on. Sometimes Chris has some comments from the Peanut Gallery. But
I was a guest on this show once upon a time. Unfortunately,
a few times, yeah.
I don't want anybody even look up that episode because Lawrence fed me so much rum before that show.
Yeah, there was that was a fun one because here's I think we only got through like one chapter. But the because yeah, Aaron was just being Aaron and going off. So and because both him and I were absolutely wasted. Who cares? Like we were just drinking, and then afterwards we went to go get some Mongolian grill, and that was delicious.
Sounds tasty.
Yeah, it was.
It was really good.
Yeah.
Anyway, congratulations on that. And one of the things that the reason I wanted to call attention to that was because Lawrence has said a number of times that when he started reading the Bible, it's like I've started a couple of projects myself like this. I mean, okay, well, yeah, I'll do this just to take up my time or whatever, and then realize the importance of it later on. And yeah, I would in some of the endeavors that I've done, I've had like a team, a sort of self-assembled, like when we read the Quran, and it started to become more important than it was when it started, and I realized we're actually involved in something that has import here. Should have taken the first episode seriously, or more seriously. And there's a couple of projects like that I wish that I had been able to start it out with the reverence that I ended up with by the end of it. And Lawrence has said many times that he's glad that he's glad that he's on this show because he cut his teeth on his own show.
Yeah, those early episodes were just garbage. Like if you go back and watch those early episodes, I posted this on Facebook, like just like a screenshot of our table. When we first started, our first episode was just a KJV. And the reason we picked that, like this was before I learned anything about textual history, or before I knew Greek or any biblical studies, was just not in my it was not in my purview. The only thing I knew about biblical studies was stuff that I learned, quote unquote, from people like Carrier and Fitzgerald. So it was a very narrow viewpoint. And then as the show kind of developed, we were like, we need something to explain some of this stuff because some of it's really weird. It's a context that we don't understand. So we started adding books. And then by the end of it, like I think, yeah, during the last part of that last episode that we just had, we pooled all the books into huge stacks that we had on the table, just like readily available, because it had just accumulated over time. And we have cited all of them at some point, not in every episode. That'd be way too much. But yeah, and then we switched out, like, depending on the book that we're in, we'd switch out like the book specific commentaries. But we had a whole bunch. And then at the studio, we have nearly the entire Hermenia series, which is the best commentary series. Unfortunately, it's not yet complete, but it is the best commentary series. And now we just have those books, which is phenomenal.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and now I'm always adding more books, expanding projects and stuff like that. We're still doing the Friday show, which is mostly like apocryphal stuff, or just all apocryphal stuff that isn't canonical, and it's a lot of fun. We read like Gnostic texts sometimes. We're in Second Baruch right now. So when I first started, I didn't know what I was getting into, and then I just became more and more interested in it. As Aaron said, I wish I would have had that same outlook at the very beginning. So yes, I'm very happy to be doing this show, and I'm really thankful that Aaron invited me to do this.
Thank you so much. I've got a couple comments to read here. The Unlucky Legume offers $20 and says, a small gift to keep the lights on and the blasphemy flowing. Thank you sincerely for that. Blonde Quixotius says, Blonde Quixotius. The words were blended together. the way that I'm reading it here, but it was supposed to be Blonde Quixote, which is
Blanc Quixote. That's so good. That's so good.
Yeah. As an ex-Muslim, I really value the team effort on infidels' Qurans. Thank you so much for that. And I was sad when we came to the end of the Quran and there was no reason to keep going, and so the team just has to disband, right? But you get used to working with these people, and so I've been like seeking options to, wherever I can, to connect with some of them. Anyway, I understand that Matt had something that he wanted to go over. Is this a good time for that, Matt?
Yeah, perfect time. As we've just finished Numbers. Is my internet working okay?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, great. So this is a recap so far, and it's actually really good to do it now because we just finished Numbers. So I think it's quite important to put some of these things together, especially as well for people that are on that knife edge with how they feel about Christianity and the Bible and what you're reading. So anyway, so the recap is what is God like so far? So how do we sum God up as a deity? We have to go to the Bible. And from what we've read so far, there seems to be something a little bit wrong with God. I mean, I'll be reading some verses from the books covered in Blasphemers Bible so far. Now, if you want more context to any of the verses, then you can always go back to the Blasphemers Bible episode, which what covers the chapter where the verse is from. So what I'm looking at here really is going through some verses, and is God, evil? And I don't mean like a spiritual type of evil. I mean the definition from the dictionary evil. So like Oxford Dictionary, profoundly immoral and wicked. Okay, I'll try and rattle through it as quick as possible. Right. Okay, so just a couple of quick verses. What does the Bible say about God? Like his character. So in Psalms 5, verse 4, for you are not a God who delights in wickedness, evil may not dwell within you. Proverbs chapter 6, verse 16 to 19. There are 6 things that the Lord hates, 7 that are abomination to the Lord: haughty eyes, a lying tongue, hands that shed innocent blood, and a heart that devises wicked plans, feet that make haste to run to evil, a false witness who breathes out lies, and one who sows discord among brothers. Now, also, when reading through the Old Testament, a lot of time I've heard a lot of Christians say, well, Jesus came along and changed things and all of that. But these same Christians also believe that Jesus was there from the beginning, as they will cite things like John 1, verse 1 and 2. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was in the beginning with God. So let's go to sorry, bear with me. I'm reading my own writing. It is terrible. Okay, so Genesis 3, verse 16. Have I written there? Yeah, I think so. Yeah. So this is obviously the story about God punishing Eve, basically, for eating the fruit. I will greatly multiply your pain in childbirth. In pain you will bring forth children, yet your desire will be for your husband, and he will rule over you. Now, there's something to ask there. Why pain? Why increase pain? And why does the man have to rule over the woman? Then we'll move on to, and by the way, I'm not covering everything here, so don't worry, we're not going to be here for hours, because we would be if I was. So the flood, Genesis chapter 6, verse 5 to 7. So this is God not doing the flood, it's him talking about that he's going to do it. Then the Lord saw that the wickedness of man was great on the earth, and that every intent of his thoughts of his heart was continuously evil. The Lord was sorry that he had made man on the earth, and that he grieved in his heart. The Lord said, I will blot out man, whom I have created, from the face of the land, for from man to animals to creeping things and to the birds of the sky, for I am sorry that I have made them. So, I mean, when you look at these stories, everyone, whenever God decides to do stuff like everyone is wicked, I mean, that just is not realistic at all. You just look at the world today. There are plenty of wicked people, plenty of good people, and plenty of people that have done silly things, such as myself, but not necessarily evil. But I'm not a bad person as much as lots of you out there are too. But this, when he flooded the world, there would have obviously been pregnant women that he killed. So he's terminating births there. He's killing all of the animals, which done nothing wrong. And then he's also killing children, babies, grandparents. Not everyone would have been wicked. That's just that just doesn't add up, does it? And yeah, why go to that extent, right? But I could say more about that, but I will move on because I don't want to keep everyone too long. So Genesis chapter 12, verse 17 and 18. But the Lord struck Pharaoh and his house with the great plagues because of Sarai, Abram's wife. The Pharaoh called Abram and said, what is this you have done to me? Why did you not tell me she was your wife? So we read a minute ago God's about what God likes and dislikes. He hates lies. He said it in Proverbs 6. He hates lies, but here he backs Abram, in his lie by striking the Pharaoh. Abram deceived the Pharaoh. So, so God is backing Abram in his lie. And why a plague? Yeah, again, so let's carry on anyway. So still in Genesis chapter 17, verse 10. This is my covenant which you shall keep between me and your descendants after you. Every male among you shall be circumcised. God wants people to cut bits of their body off. Let's move on. Genesis chapter 19, Sodom and Gomorrah. Well, I don't think I need to read much about that. A lot of you know the story about that. Killing children again, babies. And there would have been at least one pregnant woman. There got to have been. And really, where every single person was wicked. And did he not learn from the flood that doesn't work then? But anyway, let's move on. Right. Genesis 22, verse 1. Now it came about after these things that God tested Abraham and said to him, Abraham, have I done that? And he said, here I am. He said, take now your son, your only son, whom you love, Isaac, and go to the land of Moriah, and offer him as a burnt offering on one of the mountains of which I'll tell you. What a horrible thing. I mean, come on. Let's be serious. What a horrible thing to ask of somebody. And not just that, God's lying because he knows he's not going to get him to go through with it anyway. So God's telling a lie, which isn't the first lie he told either. Anyway, so I mean, that's just a hideous thing to ask somebody to sacrifice their child and make them think that who would do that anyway? But anyway, okay, so now we go on into Exodus chapter 11, verse 4 and 5. Moses said, thus says the Lord, about midnight I'm going out into the midst of Egypt, and all of the firstborn in the land of Egypt shall die, from the firstborn of Pharaoh who sits in his throne, even to the firstborn of his slave girl who is behind the millstone, all the firstborn of the cattle as well. So here we go again. God's showing his glory by killing children. yet again, and I'm pretty sure he had already killed the animals twice or three times before that anyway. But so this is what God does. He likes to kill. And let's carry on. Exodus chapter 21, verse 20 to verse 21. If a man strikes his male or female slave with a rod and he dies at his hands, he shall be punished. If, however, he survives a day or two, no vengeance shall be taken, for he is his property. Now, maybe not all of you, but I'm pretty sure some of you have seen people beaten real bad. And it can be nasty for that person, not even if they got broken bones. But it's not just the fact of that, is it? If somebody's being beaten regularly, it's a mental thing as well, ending up with things like PTSD or complex post-traumatic stress disorder, which is even higher. So, and then there's also another big thing in here, owning people, which is absolutely terribly wrong. Okay, let's move on. Exodus chapter 22, verse 20. He who sacrifices to any other god than the Lord alone shall be utterly destroyed. I'm not suggesting that we should be sacrificing stuff, but even if somebody's like sacrificing grain to something else, that should be their free will. A bit like what Lilith said a few episodes back. It's a bit like a gun to your head. Do what I say, otherwise you'll be utterly destroyed. Exodus chapter 32, verse 10. So this is about the golden calf. Now then, let me alone, that my anger may burn against them, and that I may destroy them, and I will make of you a great nation. Just another example. That's God's go-to. He just wants to destroy. Yeah, so let's move on to Exodus chapter 33, verse 3. Go up to a land flowing with milk and honey, for I will not go up in your midst, because you are an obstinate people, and I might destroy you along the way. I think the context of this story was, didn't they go up to the land or something? Well, let's not get
They
into that.
upset God. There's a lot of those.
Okay, so this one's just to throw in the middle of that, this is God talking about himself here. So this is when Moses gets to see God's rear end. So Exodus 34, chapter 6.
That is America's ass.
Yeah. Then the Lord passes in front of him and proclaims, the Lord God, compassionate and gracious, slow to anger, and abounding in loving kindness and truth, who keeps loving kindness for thousands, who forgives iniquity, transgression, and sin. Yet he will by no means leave the guilty unpunished, visiting the iniquity of the father on the children and on the grandchildren to the third and fourth generation. I mean, you read, it's like what you just said, loving, compassionate, forgiven, but you're going to punish the fourth generation because someone done something. I mean, how wrong is that? If we had to do that now, is it time that my great granddad went to prison when he was turned my age on my birthday? So that's my time to go to prison too, that kind of thing, Anyway, so now we're in Leviticus. We're getting there now, so I won't keep you much longer. Leviticus chapter 10, verse 1 and 2. No, they're these bloody Hebrew names again. Now, Nabab and Aaron's sons. So basically they burn, I'll cut this one short, they burnt strange fire, and God set them on fire for doing it. Now,
well, it was strange fire.
Yeah, exactly. What is
what else
strange
can
fire?
you do?
I accidentally let a little bit of rosemary fall into the pot. But that's hideous. What a hideous thing to do. So I think I've broken this verse down a little bit. So this is Leviticus chapter 24. I've written here verse 10 to 15. But now the son of an Israelite woman whose father was an Egyptian went out among the sons of Israel. And to cut it short, they got into a bit of a scuffle. He blasphemed. So they decided to ask God what to do with him. So God decided that his punishment should be that he should be stoned to death. I mean, being stoned to death must be an absolutely horrific thing to witness, for somebody to go through. I mean, it's just utterly horrible. Okay, so Numbers chapter 11, verse 1. Now the people, because like those who complain of adversity in the hearing of the Lord, and when the Lord heard it, that his anger kindled, and the fire of the Lord burned among them and consumed some of the outskirts of the camp. Now, this is what I was saying earlier about when one of you guys read that the Lord dwells with them. I mean, can you imagine that? I mean, we just read these things, but if you just try to even imagine being there, that people are just being set on fire. I'm right in thinking that's what it means there, set on fire, isn't it? In that chapter.
I believe so.
This is where they're complaining about food, I think, and God sets a load of them on fire, and then he sends the quails. It's Numbers chapter 11. Anyway, I'll move
And then
on.
he gives them a plague, or I don't know. He's very murdery. He's very murdery every time they ask
He's
for
very
food.
murdery.
Every time they ask for food or water or some other such luxurious thing like that, he kills a bunch of them.
And he loves the smell of burning flesh.
He does.
Yeah. Right, Numbers chapter 14, verse 12. I will smite them with pestilence and dispose them, and I will make you a great nation, greater than, mightier than they. It's just that whole thing yet again. He just wants to do it. It's his first reaction, pretty much what his first thought. That's what it feels like to me. I'm getting some of this. I'm obviously just giving my opinion. Numbers chapter 15, verse 32 to verse 36. Now, while the sons of Israel were in the wilderness, they found a man gathering wood on. Do you know what? I'm not going to read all of this because most of you guys, we've just been through this just recently. So, exactly. So the guy's picking up sticks and he gets stoned to death. And you know, when I mean, let's not forget that obviously, if you're a Christian, you believe Jesus is there. Jesus is from the beginning, so Jesus must be there. Yeah, right. Then, so I can imagine that in many of them situations, if anyone had to deal with that situation, if you were a God, you could think of much. I would imagine nearly most of you people are way more moral, kind, considerate, and more loving than this God of the Bible. And that's just not what would be of an all-knowing, all-powerful, so-called loving God. But yes, but the thing is as well is that if a man wanted to come and live with you, and this person killed children, set people on fire, had no problem with slavery, and the rape of women, would you let them stay in your house? Would you let them look after your children?
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Now, I know some of that sounds a bit harsh, but it's what's in the Bible. If I've got anything out of context, there's people here, they can always correct me with the more expertise than me. But, you know,
the summation is the summation of what you're saying is that
God is a bit of a dick.
Yeah.
Actually, you reminded me of the words of Colonel Ingersoll. A God has nothing to teach me about how to love my children who had to drown his own. I would say, in my opinion, as far as I could see, and I'm perfectly willing for anyone to bring anything to the table on this, I can conceive of no character more evil, and I don't think there is a character more evil contrived in all of human history and mythology than the God that eventually developed into Christian theology. And I specify that because I know that variations of the Jewish God are not always all powerful, and the Yetzer Hara is not necessarily seen in the same way as the devil. So, but I can't imagine anything more evil. And I have publicly asked people to name any evil action, any genocidal action, any violation of human rights, of the Geneva Conventions, of any law of decency. And I will give an example from the Bible where God either personally performed it or explicitly, personally ordered it. And I've never had the slightest difficulty answering that challenge.
I forgot one bit. So one thing as well that is very important not to do is to try and to pretend that there are words in between the lines that we read. The bits that are the paper behind. You know, if I'm going to make this bit up, but if it said in the Bible that Moses went round the rock and he took a dump and he used a leaf to wipe his bum from north to south and then from east to west, that's not a prophecy of the cross and Jesus. I know that's a bit, but it's true.
The compass was always a thing. I'm glad they don't go into that much detail on Moses, honestly. I don't need to know that.
All right. Yeah, I trust that we come to the end of Matt's commentary. Have we?
Yeah. Well, I have a 45-minute sermon prepared if you guys are ready.
That's not how long I want, is it?
God's
Sorry.
good time. Okay.
Your sermon has not received prior
How great God is.
authorization.
No? Okay. Maybe next time.
We're starting Deuteronomy, so
Yeah.
That's going to be fun.
Which is the word means we're doing all of this over again, right?
Some of it. So the word does mean second law. So it does mean that. So
Deuteronomy.
We can talk about the Deuteronomistic source and the history of it next time, Lawrence.
Yes. I have. Here, let me pull up a few things. So I'm going to talk about the idea of a hexateuch a little bit, which was an idea in early scholarship. I'm going to talk a little bit about that more, the Deuteronomistic school of thought and whatnot. But it would be improper to call it like the Deuteronomistic history, which I have like a whole bunch of things on. Hold up, I actually have these right here. So there's been a lot of really good work published on the Deuteronomistic history. So this is was this from around the year 2000, I think. So this is called Israel Constructs Its History, Deuteronomistic Historiography in Recent Research, edited by Albert Dupuy, Thomas Romer, and Jean Daniel Mackay. I don't know how to pronounce that. So this book is a very good overview of arguments when it comes to the Deuteronomistic history and the case of the Deuteronomist or the Deuteronomistic school of thought, which I will cover a little bit, but of course more of it we're going to get when we start Joshua.
History,
once we start the actual
Deuteronomistic history in reference is not Deuteronomy. Deuteronomy is the book of the law that they totes for real found guys for realsies. The Deuteronomistic histories, which are associated with the same time frame school of thought, not necessarily explicitly the same author, is Joshua, Judges,
First and Second Samuel, First and Second
Samuel, First and Second Kings.
Although
I don't know.
Ruth is shoved in the middle there.
It's not even in the Hebrew Bible. It's not located there. It's located much later
in writings.
Yeah, we're using the Christian order, but it's not the only order.
Yeah, another book that I'm going to be utilizing for this is so it's called The Time, Place, and Purpose of the Deuteronomistic History: The Evidence of Until This Day. So this is a fairly detailed study of the phrase "until this day" and what that meant if you're writing, at a future time, right? Like the ideological sense. So it's really interesting stuff. And then of course I'll pull up some commentaries on Deuteronomy itself.
Yes, I also I actually started writing my notes. I mean, I've reached out to chapter 8, and yes, and new commentaries. I've put a lot of effort. I've even included a book from the Biblia Hebraica Quinta, which is a critical edition of the Masoretic text with comparison with the translations, including Dead Sea Scrolls. It should be fun.
That is interesting and exciting.
Okay, so we're going to be starting Deuteronomy on Saturday,
Yes.
and I don't have anything else to say about that. I'm just glad that we're making progress through this, and Lawrence has shown us that there is an out eventually.
Yeah,
Well,
that
at
is
this
true.
rate, what would that make our pace? I think we're 11 years.
Only 5 years to go.
using your metric, yeah.
Well, that depends
no,
on how many
he's going
excuses you
faster.
got.
We might speed it up during Psalms or something like that.
Oh, please.
Don't
You know
speed it
what?
up.
Oh.
Even when I was young, the law didn't defeat me driving straight through the Bible. It was the frickin' Psalms. They're boring.
Lawrence, you can't speed it up. I finally have a fixed income.
How many psalms are there again?
150 or
150.
151 if you include
Or 154. There are some like another 4 or 5 psalms.
Yeah, it
If I remember
depends.
correctly.
Depends on the
These
word.
are so weird.
In the
Yeah, we're so
the
weird.
Bible, the Protestant Bible, there's only 150, and there's a joke about the 153rd Psalm because the 100th Psalm and the 53rd Psalm start with the same words. But yeah, it's
Best one is 119.
Oh God! Oh
Yeah,
God!
that's the acrostic, right?
The longest
Yeah.
chapter in the Bible, which is just David or whoever the actual author is wanking off about how great the law is. Which, considering that we've spent about a freaking year reading this shit, no, it is not great. It's psychopathic
Hey, sweetie.
and occasionally very boring.
He's like, I want
All
to
right.
make a chapter that each verse begins with the letter of the alphabet in order, or whatever. And he's like, what subject can I go on for a long time about? Yeah. Oh, the law, obviously.
Obviously,
All right.
well,
We're gonna have to close this up. I've got another thing I've got to get to.
okay. Yeah, me too.
So want to
All right.
thank everybody and see you on Saturday.
Bye, everybody.
Actually, I'll see you on Friday at the Friday Apocryphal Podcast.
Yes.